Today's video is gonna be on TIG welding. What do you do when you wanna TIG weld a patch panel into a fender, into anything sheet metal on a car? For me, my technique might be different than other people's. You know, there's a million ways to skin a cat, but this is how I do it. I make sure that my fit up is super, super tight. With TIG welding, it really matters if your gap gets a little bit wide. It's easier to burn through, especially with thinner material. So you make sure that your fit is perfect. 90% of TIG welding is just making it fit really nice. Basically, once I line it all up, I'm gonna tack it in a couple spots. I'm gonna line it up. I'm gonna make sure that the panels are fitting, you know, together nicely. Panel alignment. I can't use my other finger because it's holding the camera. You don't want one panel to be above the other when you're installing the patch. So tack it, and then I get the tacks closer together until they're about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch maximum distance apart from each other. Closer the better, really. Just fusion tacks work fine as long as your fitment is very tight. Then you'll be able to fusion tack it. Once everything is tacked, then I get to hammer and dolly that area, make sure that it's something you can access the back of. You hammer and dolly it to make sure that your panel fitment is perfect. So dolly on the back side, hammer on the outside, and tapping along it to make sure that everything is basically on the same plane. Now, once all those tacks are evenly spaced apart, they don't have to be super even, but they just got to be tight to make sure that as you're welding it, the panel doesn't warp. Once that's done, you know, you might see people MIG welding patches and they'll just keep tacking it until it's all up. I mean, I do that too in places where I can't use TIG weld to get the backside. But with TIG welding, once everything's tacked and the fitment is tight and everything's tacked and you've, you know, smoothed it all out, you just weld it. Start at one end and just weld it. It's gonna distort, and that's fine. All that's gonna happen is that it's gonna shrink a little bit. Now that's why it's so important to have really consistent panel fitment, is because when you weld it all the way, you want it to distort evenly if possible. You know, it's gonna distort for sure. It's gonna shrink. That's what heat does, is it shrinks. It's nice if it's super even. You did a tight fit, you welded the whole thing, and then it all distorted evenly, and then now you just have to hammer it right on the weld to stretch that weld back out, and then your panel should align. That is the technique. Now here's how I do it. All right, so we got this piece fitting pretty good. Takes a little bit of filing, you know, to make sure that it's as tight as it can be. There it is, you know, super tight. Now it's time to tack. You know, butt weld clamps, people like using them. I personally, in this scenario, I'm not gonna use them because they do leave a little bit of a gap. You know, I can get it even tighter if I don't use them, and these fit really, really good. I'm just gonna hold them in place, like hold the patch as tight in as I can, and wherever it's touching, I'm gonna get a couple little fusion tacks to hold it where it's gonna be, make sure that it's aligned, and then tack, 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 like I said before, till they're nice and tight, and then we weld it. So before we get into this, I'm just using a 1/16 2% thoriated, that's the red tipped electrode, sharpened up nice. I'm running about 70 amps so that I can sort of stab it a little bit and get my fusion tacks, as well as dial it back for my full welds. As far as filler rod, I just use the 035 wire out of my MIG welder. You can buy 040 in the store, but my store locally doesn't stock it, so I find this stuff works great. Thin wire makes it nice and easy. Here we go. What's up? So, finished up the welding and the smoothing out of this fender here. It turned out pretty decent, I think. Everything does need Bondo though. I don't want you guys to think this is like metal finished where somebody, you know, pick and filed it and made it so it needed absolutely no filler. This will need filler. It's to be expected. All, you know, nice things need a little bit of filler still, but it's as close as I could get it. I'm pretty happy with the repair. So, that's it for TIG Welding 101 on sheet metal. Make sure that your gaps are tight, everything's consistent, make sure everything's clean, and just do your best and smooth it out after. That's all there is.